Hello everyone. Welcome to part 4 in our series on the derivative. Today we're going to be talking about the product rule. Okay, what is the product rule? Well, suppose that I have a function h of x, and it's equal to some function f of x times another function g of x. The product rule tells us how to find the derivative of this function h. Okay, here we go. The derivative of h is, the product rule says that the derivative of h is the first function times the derivative of the second function plus the second function times the derivative of the first function. That's it. Many people remember this product rule by saying first times the derivative of the second plus the second times the derivative of the first. If you want a shorthand notation for this, many people write it like this. Fg prime, that's the derivative of f times g, equals first derivative of the second plus the second derivative of the first. That's a nice shorthand way of writing it. Okay, that's it. Now, if that's the first time you're seeing this, you might be thinking, oh, geez, that's kind of complicated. It would have been nice, right? It would have been really nice if it had been instead simply this. If the derivative of a product f times g was actually just the derivative of f times the derivative of g. Why not this? It's too bad, but it's wrong. And I'm not going to prove why this is true, but I can certainly show you why this is wrong, and then we'll do some examples with the product rule, and then hopefully you'll accept that, okay, at least it's got a chance to be the right thing before I even see the proof. Okay, let's see why our fake product rule, and I'll put it in green up here. Okay, this is what I call wishful thinking. So let's come up with an example where we know the answer ahead of time. Let's take h of x to be 1 times x. Okay, so that's actually just x. And we know the derivative of the function x. The derivative of that is just 1. Let's use the product rule both in our wishful thinking form and in the real form to see which gives us the right answer. That won't prove that the product rule, as I put it in red in the previous slide, that won't prove that that's true, but at least it will prove that this one is wrong. Okay, so when we do the product rule, we need to identify what is the function f and what is the function g. I'm going to take this function to be f. It's just the function 1, that's a perfectly good function, and this function to be g. Okay, so this is f of x. This one is g of x. Okay, let's use the wishful thinking product rule first. I'll put that in green. H prime of x equals, wishful thinking, we just take the derivative of this, well, that's 0, times the derivative of this function, g, well, that's just 1, and I get 0. Okay, there it is. That's why this doesn't work, right? We know the derivative answer should be 1. We actually got 0. Womp womp. Okay, let's use the actual product rule. H prime of x is the first function, f, that's 1, times the derivative of the second function, g. Second function, g, is x, so the derivative is also 1, plus the second function, well, that's x, times the derivative of the first function, f. Well, the derivative of the function 1 is just 0. So the answer I get is, in fact, 1, which is actually what we got because we knew the answer ahead of time. Okay, so we learned that this, our wishful thinking rule, is wrong, and at least we learned that our product rule gave us the right answer in a simple case. Let's try another example. Let's try h of x equals x times x squared. Okay, here's another one. We know that h of x ahead of time, we know that's going to be x cubed. What's the derivative of that? Well, we know from our power rule that the derivative is just 3x squared. Okay, so that's what our newly learned product rule should give us when we actually take the derivative of this using the product rule. We should get 3x squared. Let's see if that's what we get. Okay, so I'm going to call this function f of x. I'm going to call this function g of x. Let's just go ahead and do it. H prime of x equals first function times the derivative of the second function. The derivative of x squared is 2x, plus the second function times the derivative of the first function. Well, that's just 1. The derivative of f of x, which is x, is 1. Okay, what do we get? 2x squared plus x squared. I get 3x squared. Okay, the answer we kind of knew what is going to be ahead of time. That matches what the product rule gives us. So I think we should be feeling a little more confident that the product rule actually is correct. Okay, let's do another example. How about h of x equals x squared plus 1 times the square root of x? Okay, as always, we have to identify what our two functions are. In this case, I'm going to make this one f of x. I'm going to make this one g of x. Obviously, we have to know how to take the derivative of each one of these things separately. Okay, h prime of x equals first function times the derivative of g. Well, that's just 1/2 over, or 1 over square root of x. There's a bunch of different ways to write that. Remember that this thing is x to the 1/2, so the derivative is 1/2 x to the minus 1/2, which is the same as this. It's up to you to decide whether you like this better or this better. We haven't finished, right? Because we have to write the second function times the derivative of the first function. Well, that's just 2x. Now, in principle, this is totally fine. That is, in fact, the answer. And depending on who is asking you the question, this might be perfectly fine. Other people might want you to get this all into one fraction. Let's try doing that. But again, that's not exactly necessary. The derivative part was done as soon as we wrote this out. The rest of it is just going to be algebra. Okay, so x squared plus 1 over 2 root x plus root x times 2x. Now, if I want to add this with a common denominator, I'm going to have to multiply by root x and also divide by root x. Oh, it looks like I also need a 2. Okay, let's multiply by 2 and multiply by 2 up there. I think I'm going to have to give us a little more room here. Extend my line a little bit. Okay, now I can combine them into one big fraction. All one happy family. Okay, x squared plus 1 plus, well, this looks kind of messy, but it's not so bad. Root x times root x is x, times x is x squared, and then 2 times 2, so it looks like I'm going to get a 4x squared Okay. We're basically done. One more simplification down here. I take the x squareds, add them together. I get 5x squared plus 1 all over 2 root x. And that's our answer. Okay, that's the product rule. I hope that helps, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.